My name is Margaret. I am 67 years old, speaking to you from Texas, here in the United States. Before I begin my story, please don't forget to subscribe, like, and click on the notification button so you don't miss the next chapters of my life story. And tell me, from which part of the country are you watching from? Now let me take you into a journey you will never forget. Broken Heart. I was kidnapped 1 week to my wedding day. Broken Heart. The smell of the van still lingers in my memory, even now. It was a sharp mix of gasoline, dust, and something rotten that made me choke the first time the rough hands pushed me inside. My mouth was tied with a rag, and my wrists burned from the tight rope cutting into my skin. I could hear my own heart beating louder than the engine as the van sped through dark, lonely roads. I remember the voice of the man who sat beside me. He leaned close, his breath hot and sour against my ear, and whispered, "You should have listened, Margaret. Now no wedding for you." My eyes widened in shock. My wedding? My dream day? Just 1 week away. Was this how it was all going to end? The van jolted as it swerved off the main road, and my body slammed against the cold metal walls. I tried to scream, but the gag only muffled my cries. Every thought in my head was tangled. Who were they? Why me? And what would happen next? My fiancé's smile flashed in my mind, his promise to protect me. But how could he protect me now, when he didn't even know where I was? And then suddenly, I heard one of the men say, "She's worth more alive than dead. Let's wait for instructions." Those words sank into me like knives. Who was behind this? Who had given instructions? Just when I thought I might faint from fear, the van came to a stop. The back doors flung open, and blinding light from a flashlight cut into my eyes. A shadowy figure stood there and said in a cold voice, "Bring her out. Tonight begins her lesson." At that very moment, my knees buckled. My heart screamed inside me. And that is where my nightmare began. Now let me take you back to where it all started, before the van, before the ropes, before the fear. Back to the days when everything seemed normal, and all I dreamed of was my wedding day. It was a warm evening in Dallas. The sun was dipping low, painting the skies with shades of gold and purple. I was humming to myself while arranging flowers in a vase. My heart was light, my fingers shaking with excitement as I thought about the white dress waiting for me in the boutique. In just 7 days, I was going to walk down the aisle. Family and friends had already started arriving. My house was filled with laughter, the kind that warms your bones. My sister, Nancy, was in the kitchen baking cookies while my niece tried on shoes that were too big for her tiny feet. I remember holding my phone in my hand, scrolling through messages of congratulations, my heart swelling with gratitude. But even in that joy, there were shadows I ignored. Strange calls that came late at night with no one answering on the other side. A car I saw more than once parked across the street, its windows tinted too dark. My neighbor had even asked me, "Margaret, do you know someone watching your house?" I brushed it off. I thought it was just nerves before the wedding. Looking back now, I wish I had paid more attention. The next day, I went to meet my fiancé Robert. He was tall, kind, and the kind of man who made you feel safe just by holding your hand. We sat in a small cafe sipping coffee, and he held my hand across the table. "Margaret," he said, smiling softly, "after next week, you'll never be alone again. I promise." I believed him with all my heart. But promises, I learned, can be broken by forces you never see coming. As the days drew closer to my wedding, I started feeling something I couldn't explain. It was like a shadow following me wherever I went. One evening, as I was walking back from the grocery store, my phone rang. When I picked it up, the voice on the other end said only one thing: "Call off the wedding, or pay the price." Then the line went dead. I froze in the middle of the street, my bag slipping from my hands. My heart pounded so hard that I could barely breathe. I tried to convince myself it was a prank call, maybe some cruel joke. But deep inside, a seed of fear began to grow. I didn't tell Robert. I didn't want to worry him. Instead, I prayed harder and kept moving forward, hoping nothing would stop my happiness. But I was wrong. Dead wrong. A week before the wedding, my nightmare came alive. I was walking out of the dress shop, carrying my wedding gown wrapped in white plastic. The air was cool, and I remember smiling as I imagined myself wearing it. That was when I noticed the black van parked across the street. My steps quickened, but before I could react, the van door slid open. Two men in masks jumped out. I screamed, but one of them covered my mouth with a cloth. The other grabbed my arms, and before I knew it, I was dragged into the van. My gown fell to the ground, forgotten. The last thing I saw before the doors slammed shut was the streetlight flickering, as if even the night itself was warning me. Inside the van, my world collapsed into darkness. And then something happened that I never expected. The masked man sitting across from me pulled off his mask, and my blood froze when I saw his face. It was someone I knew. The moment the mask came off, my breath caught in my throat. My eyes widened, and my heart dropped as if it had fallen into my stomach. The man staring back at me wasn't a stranger. It was Michael, Robert's cousin. I knew him well. He had attended every family gathering, smiled politely at me during dinners, and even helped me carry groceries once when Robert wasn't around. How could it be him? My mind spun as I stared at him, tied and helpless, searching for an answer in his eyes. Michael. I tried to speak through the gag, my words muffled. He leaned forward, his expression cold, not the friendly one I had known. Don't act surprised, he said in a low, steady voice. You should have seen this coming. My heart pounded harder. Seen this coming? What did he mean? The other masked men looked at him as though he were the leader, waiting for his instructions. That made it worse. He wasn't just a part of this, he was in charge. I wanted to scream. I wanted to demand why he would betray me, betray his own cousin. But I couldn't. The ropes cut into my wrists every time I struggled. Fear choked me more than the gag did. The van kept moving, bumping along a rough road. Finally, it stopped in front of what looked like an old warehouse. The air smelled of rust, oil, and damp wood. The men dragged me inside and tied me to a chair in the middle of the room. My legs trembled, my eyes darting everywhere. Michael walked slowly around me, his voice echoing in the empty space. You think Robert loves you, don't you? You think you're the reason for his happiness? Let me tell you something, Margaret. You're the reason for his downfall. I shook my head, tears filling my eyes. I didn't understand. Robert and I had built dreams together. We were supposed to be each other's future. Michael continued, his eyes dark with bitterness. All my life, I've been second place. Robert always got everything. The respect, the business deals, the family pride. And now he's getting you too. But not anymore. This time, I'll take what's his. His words pierced me like sharp blades. Suddenly, I realized this wasn't just about me. This was jealousy. Envy so deep it had twisted him into someone unrecognizable. For a moment, silence filled the room, broken only by the sound of dripping water somewhere in the distance. My mind raced. If Michael wanted to hurt Robert, then I was the weapon. I wasn't kidnapped by strangers, I was kidnapped by family. The other men, restless, began to whisper among themselves. One of them, a tall man with tattoos snaking up his neck, asked, "So what do we do with her now?" Michael smirked. "We wait. Robert will pay for her. And when he does, he'll learn that love can destroy." Tears rolled down my cheeks. My wedding, my future, everything I had dreamed of. It was all being ripped apart by the very people who should have protected me. The hours passed slowly like years. My body ached from sitting tied to the chair. The cold of the warehouse crept into my bones. My stomach growled, but they gave me nothing. At one point, one of the men tossed me a bottle of water, but even drinking from it was hard with my hands bound. Night turned into day. Day turned into night again. I lost track of time. My hope started to fade, but in my heart I kept praying. Please God, don't let this be the end. Please let Robert find me. Then something happened that gave me both fear and hope. On the second night, when the men were arguing about money, I heard a phone ring. Michael answered it. His face darkened as he listened. Then his voice rose, filled with anger. "No," I said, "double the amount, or she doesn't leave here alive." I froze. He was talking about me. But then, in the middle of the argument, I heard another voice shouting through the phone. A voice I knew. It was Robert. He had found them. My heart leapt, but fear struck me just as fast. If Robert was negotiating, it meant he knew I was alive. But it also meant Michael had the power to decide my fate. Michael slammed the phone shut and turned to me. His eyes blazed like fire. He walked closer, leaned down until his face was inches from mine and whispered, "If Robert thinks he's smart, he'll learn tonight just how much you're worth." Before I could process his words, Michael snapped his fingers. Two of the men came forward. They untied me from the chair, but before I could feel relief, they dragged me toward the back door of the warehouse. "Where are you taking me?" I tried to scream, but the gag muffled my voice again. Michael's cruel smile was the last thing I saw before the night swallowed me whole. And then, out of the shadows outside the warehouse, came a sound that made every man freeze. Sirens. The police were near. The sound of the sirens cut through the night like sharp knives. My heart leapt with sudden hope. The police had found me. But just as quickly, terror followed. What if Michael panicked? What if the men decided to silence me before the police got closer? The masked men around me began to shout. "They're here. We have to move," one of them barked. The warehouse, once filled with cruel laughter and whispered threats, was now chaos. Michael, however, didn't flinch. His eyes were cold, steady. He raised his hand, and the men froze. "Don't panic," he growled. "The police don't know exactly where we are yet. But if they come too close, we'll make sure she's not alive to be rescued." His words sliced through me. I struggled against the ropes, my wrists raw and bleeding. Tears stung my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. I couldn't give him the satisfaction of seeing me break. They dragged me deeper into the warehouse, toward a hidden room at the back. The smell of mold hit me as they shoved me inside. A single bulb swung from the ceiling, casting shadows that danced on the walls. Michael leaned close to me again, his whisper like poison. "You hear those sirens? Don't get your hopes up. Robert thinks he can outsmart me. But I promise you, Margaret, by the time this ends, he will lose everything." Then he locked the door. The sirens grew louder, echoing through the night air. I pressed my ear against the wooden door, straining to hear. I thought I caught the sound of police shouting commands, but then, gunshots cracked through the night. Bang! 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 I jumped, my knees trembling. My heart nearly stopped. Were the police firing? Or were Michael's men fighting back? I couldn't tell. The sound of footsteps thundered outside the room. Yells filled the air. Something heavy crashed against the wall. For a moment, silence. Then more gunshots. I pressed my back to the wall, praying desperately. My whole body shook as I whispered through the gag, "Please, God, save me." Minutes felt like hours. The fight outside went on and on. Then the door suddenly swung open, and light flooded the room. But it wasn't the police. It was Michael. His shirt was stained with blood. Not his own, but from one of his men, I guessed. His face was twisted with rage. He stormed toward me, grabbed my arm, and hissed, "We're leaving now." Before I could react, he pulled me out of the room. I stumbled, my feet barely keeping up. The warehouse was chaos, broken crates, smoke, the smell of gunpowder. Two of his men were down on the floor, motionless. Another clutched his leg, groaning in pain. But Michael didn't care. He dragged me toward the back exit. "They'll never catch me," he spat. "And if they try, you'll be the first to go." Outside, the night was darker than ever. A car was waiting, engine running. He pushed me into the back seat, and one of the men jumped behind the wheel. Tires screeched, and the car sped off into the night, leaving the flashing police lights far behind. My chest sank. I had been so close to freedom. The city lights blurred past as we raced down empty highways. The gag cut into my mouth, the ropes burned my wrists. My body screamed with exhaustion, but my mind refused to give up. Somewhere out there, Robert was searching. Somewhere out there, the police were closing in. But then Michael turned to me, his eyes cold and merciless. He pulled a small knife from his pocket, the blade glinting under the dim car light. He pressed it lightly against my cheek and whispered, "If Robert wants you back, he'll have to come himself. No police. No tricks. Or else." He pressed the knife harder, just enough to make my skin sting. "He'll get you back in pieces." My breath froze. Fear wrapped around me like chains. And just then, before I could even gather my thoughts, the driver shouted, "Car following us. Look." Michael twisted in his seat, his face twisting with fury. I turned too, my heart racing. Through the rear window, I saw headlights in the distance, getting closer and closer. But it wasn't the police. It was Robert. The moment I saw those headlights, my heart leapt into my throat. Even from a distance, I knew it was Robert's car. My Robert. He had found me. Hope, warm and trembling, rose inside me like a small flame. But then I looked at Michael's face, and that flame nearly died. His jaw tightened, his teeth clenched. "So he thinks he can play hero," Michael hissed. He slammed his fist against the dashboard, making the driver jump. "Step on it. Lose him." The car jerked forward with a roar, speeding down the empty highway. My body slammed against the seat, the ropes digging deeper into my wrists. My mind screamed, "Robert, please be careful. Please don't let him kill you because of me." The chase began. Our car swerved left and right, the tires screeching. Robert's headlights stayed close, following every turn. I could almost imagine his face. Focused, desperate, refusing to give up. My tears blurred my vision, but I refused to blink them away. Michael pulled out a gun from under his jacket. My stomach dropped. He rolled down the window, leaned halfway out, and aimed behind us. "No." I tried to scream through the gag, thrashing in my seat. But the ropes held me down. My voice was swallowed in the roar of the engine. Bang! The first gunshot rang out, echoing into the night. Sparks flew as the bullet scraped against the asphalt. Bang! The second shot hit Robert's car, shattering one of the headlights. My heart nearly stopped. But Robert didn't slow down. His car stayed right behind us, refusing to let go. Michael cursed under his breath. He turned to me, eyes wild. "He's risking your life for this? Fine. Let's see how much he's willing to lose." I shook my head violently, pleading with my eyes. But Michael only smirked and aimed again. The chase grew faster, the road narrower. We sped past dark trees, the wind howling against the windows. My body trembled from the force of every turn, every jolt. I prayed harder than I had ever prayed before. Then, out of nowhere, flashing lights appeared in the distance. Another set of police cars blocking the road ahead. The driver shouted, "Cops!" Michael's face twisted with fury. He grabbed me by the hair, yanking my head back, and pressed the gun to my temple. His voice was a snarl. "If they don't move, she dies right here." The driver swerved violently, tires screeching, and at the very last moment, turned off the main road onto a dirt path that cut into the woods. The car bounced over rocks and branches, the darkness swallowing us whole. Robert followed. The police, still far behind, struggled to keep up. The woods were thick and wild. Branches scraped against the windows, the car jolting up and down. My body ached from the impact, but my fear was louder than any pain. Robert's headlights still trailed us. Michael's voice grew more frantic. "Faster! Lose him now, or we'll all be caught." But before the driver could respond, crash! Our car slammed into something hard. The front jolted upward before coming down with a bone-rattling thud. I cried out behind the gag, my head hitting the seat. Smoke filled the car. The driver cursed loudly, pounding the steering wheel. We had crashed into a fallen tree lying across the dirt path. The car was stuck. Panic spread through the men. One of them tried restarting the engine, but it sputtered uselessly. And then through the cracked windshield, I saw Robert's car pull up behind us. His headlights lit up the woods like daylight. Michael cursed again. He shoved the driver aside, kicked open the car door, and dragged me out roughly by the arm. My knees scraped against the dirt, pain shooting up my legs. Robert jumped out of his car. His voice cut through the chaos, strong and desperate. "Margaret! Let her go." Our eyes met. Robert's filled with fear and fire, mine with desperate hope. For a moment time froze. But Michael didn't let go. He pulled me tighter against him, the gun pressed firmly against my head. His voice rang out through the night, wild and threatening. "Take one step closer, Robert, and she dies right here." The woods went silent. Even the wind seemed to stop. Robert stood frozen, his chest rising and falling with heavy breaths. And then Michael's words sliced through the air again. "Choose, Robert. Your life or hers." The cold barrel of Michael's gun pressed hard against my temple. My body trembled so badly I thought my knees might give way. His arm was locked around me, strong and merciless, dragging me back as if I were nothing but a shield. Across from us, Robert stood frozen, his eyes locked on mine. I could see the pain written all over his face, the kind of pain only love could carve. His hands were slightly raised, his voice steady but trembling underneath. "Michael, please. Let her go," Robert begged. "You don't have to do this." Michael laughed, a harsh, bitter sound that sent chills down my spine. "Don't I? You've had everything, Robert: respect, success, family, pride. And now you want her too? No. This is where I take back what I deserve." I shook my head violently, tears blurring my vision. I wanted to scream, to beg Robert not to risk himself. But the gag muffled every sound, my cries trapped in my throat. The forest around us was dark and still, except for the sound of my ragged breathing and the faint hum of police sirens struggling through the distance. They were coming, but they weren't here yet. It was just the three of us locked in this nightmare. Michael pressed the gun harder into my head. "I'll make this simple. You walk away right now, Robert. Leave her. Or I put a bullet in her skull. Your choice." My heart stopped. Robert's fists clenched at his sides. His eyes darted between me and Michael, his chest heaving. He was trying to think, trying to find a way out. I could see the war in his eyes, his love for me battling against his fear of losing me forever. "Don't hurt her," Robert said, his voice breaking. "If it's me you want, then take me. Leave Margaret out of this." For a second I thought Michael would laugh again. But instead his face twisted into something darker. "Oh no. This isn't about me wanting you. This is about me destroying you. Watching you lose the one thing you love most. That's the only way I win." My body shook as the words sank in. I wasn't just a hostage. I was a weapon, a tool to break Robert's spirit. Robert took one slow step forward. "Michael, listen to me. You don't have to do this. We can fix this." "Fix this?" Michael roared, his voice echoing through the trees. His grip on me tightened, and I whimpered from the pain. "There's no fixing years of being treated like nothing. No fixing the way everyone compared me to you. Tonight, Robert, you lose." Suddenly, headlights flashed through the trees. The police had finally caught up. Their cars screeched to a stop at the edge of the dirt path. Red and blue lights painted the woods, officers jumping out with weapons raised. "Drop the gun," one of them shouted. "Put your hands up." Michael snarled. His grip on me grew tighter. He pulled me backward, deeper into the woods. "Stay back or she dies," he screamed at the officers. The police froze, their guns steady but their eyes filled with calculation. They couldn't risk shooting. Not with me in his grip. Robert's voice cracked through the chaos. "Michael, stop. You can still walk away. Please don't do this." But Michael wasn't listening anymore. His eyes were wild, his breaths fast and uneven. The gun pressed harder into my temple. My body was shaking uncontrollably. And then, without warning, he yanked me even closer and screamed, "If I go down, she goes with me." The police shouted again, trying to calm him down, but their voices faded in my ears. All I could feel was the sharp metal against my skin, the weight of his arm around me, and the dread that this might be the last moment of my life. Robert took another step forward, desperation burning in his eyes. "Michael, please. If you kill her, you'll never win. You'll only prove that you're nothing." The words seemed to cut through the air. For a second, Michael froze. His jaw clenched, his eyes narrowed. And then, everything exploded. Michael roared in rage, shoved the gun harder into my head, and pulled the trigger. Click. The gun jammed. Time froze. The officers gasped. Robert surged forward. Michael's eyes widened in shock, his grip faltering for just a split second. And in that tiny moment, the world shifted. Robert lunged toward me. And then, out of nowhere, another gunshot rang out. Bang! But it didn't come from Michael's gun. Someone else had fired. The sound of the gunshot tore through the night like thunder. For one terrible second, I thought it was me. My whole body froze, my chest locked, waiting for the pain. But I was still standing. Michael staggered backward, his grip on me loosening. His eyes went wide, his mouth twisting in shock. Blood bloomed on his shoulder, dark and spreading fast. He let out a guttural scream. The police had fired. "Drop the gun," one officer shouted again. "This is your last warning." Michael's gun slipped from his hand, clattering against the dirt. For the first time, I felt air rush into my lungs, as if the weight of death had lifted for just a moment. Robert was right there, charging forward, his arms outstretched to grab me. But Michael wasn't finished. Fueled by rage and pain, he lunged at me with his bare hands, shoving Robert aside. His grip wrapped around my throat like iron. My eyes widened as his fingers pressed into my skin, cutting off my breath. I clawed at his hands, my lungs burning. My knees buckled under the weight of his fury. His face was inches from mine, twisted in hatred. "If I can't win," he hissed, spittle flying from his lips, "then nobody will." Robert roared, tackling him from the side. The three of us went crashing to the ground. Dirt filled my mouth. My ears rang from the struggle. Hands, feet, fists, everything blurred together in a storm of violence. The police shouted commands, their voices distant and frantic. I could hear them yelling, "Hold your fire! Hold your fire!" They couldn't risk hitting me or Robert. Robert punched Michael, fury pouring from every strike. Michael snarled, fighting back despite his wound. I scrambled away, coughing, my throat aching from his grip. My vision spun, but I forced myself to keep moving. For a moment I thought Robert had the upper hand. He pinned Michael to the ground, pressing his knee into his chest. "It's over," Robert shouted. "It's done." But Michael's eyes flashed with something wild, something desperate. And that's when I saw it. His other hand reaching toward his ankle, pulling out a small, hidden knife. My scream ripped through the night. "Robert! Look out!" Robert turned just as Michael slashed upward. The blade cut across Robert's arm, blood spraying into the air. Robert cried out, staggering back. The police surged forward, but Michael grabbed me again before they could reach us. The cold blade pressed against my neck now, sharper than the gun had ever been. My breath caught, my heart slamming against my chest. Michael's voice was hoarse, desperate, but still dripping with venom. "Nobody move, or I swear I'll slit her throat right here." The woods went silent again. Police froze, guns raised. Robert clutched his bleeding arm, his face twisted in pain and terror. Michael dragged me backward, his body shaking, his eyes wild. "You think you've won?" he screamed. "No. This isn't the end. I'll make sure of it." And then, before anyone could stop him, Michael pulled me toward the edge of the forest. My eyes widened in horror as I realized where he was taking me. The ground sloped sharply downward. At the bottom, through the trees, I could hear it, the rushing roar of water. A river. He was dragging me toward the cliff. The ground beneath my feet turned uneven as Michael yanked me through the trees, the blade pressed tight against my throat. My heart hammered in my chest, my legs stumbling over roots and rocks as he dragged me closer to the sound of the rushing river. Behind us, voices shouted, police, Robert, all calling out for him to stop. Flashlights cut through the darkness, their beams darting between the trees. But Michael didn't slow. His breath came in ragged gasps, his wounded shoulder dripping blood onto the leaves, but his grip on me never wavered. The trees suddenly broke open and my stomach dropped. We were at the cliff. The river below roared like a monster in the night, white foam crashing against black rocks. The air was damp and cold, mist rising up to kiss my face. The cliff edge was jagged, loose stones crumbling under our feet. Michael dragged me right to the brink. My toes curled against the dirt as if trying to cling to life. "Stay back!" he screamed at the figures approaching through the trees. "One more step and she goes down with me." I froze, every muscle in my body screaming with terror. The water below seemed to call my name, threatening to swallow me whole. Robert's voice cut through the chaos, sharp with both love and fear. "Michael, stop. You don't have to do this." Michael's laugh was broken, desperate. "Don't I? This is the only way I win. If I can't have peace, then nobody can." His hand shook slightly as he pressed the knife harder against my skin. I felt a sting, warm blood sliding down my neck. My breath came in short, shallow gasps. I wanted to cry, to scream, but my voice caught in my throat. Robert stepped forward, his face pale with worry, his injured arm still bleeding. "Michael, listen to me. If you do this, you'll lose everything. It's over. Let her go and maybe, just maybe, you can still walk away alive." Michael's eyes were wild, flickering between Robert, the police, and the raging river below. His grip on me tightened, his voice breaking with fury. Alive? I've never been alive, Robert. Not in your shadow. Not in this family. Tonight everything ends, one way or another. The police spread out behind Robert, guns raised, but they dared not shoot. The distance was too close. One mistake, and I'd be gone forever. The earth beneath us shifted, tiny rocks sliding off the cliff and disappearing into the raging water below. My knees buckled, fear overwhelming me. I could feel my heartbeat in my throat, in my ears, everywhere. Michael leaned close, his whisper sharp and venomous. Say goodbye to him, Margaret. Say goodbye to everything. I turned my head slightly, my tear-filled eyes locking on Robert's. His lips moved silently. I love you. And then Michael pushed. My body lurched forward, the world spinning. For one terrifying second I felt weightless, like the earth had vanished beneath me. But instead of falling alone, I felt his grip yank me tighter. Michael had jumped with me. We were both going over the edge. The world vanished beneath me. The air tore past my face, icy and sharp, as Michael's arm clamped around me like a chain. My scream ripped through the night but was drowned out by the deafening roar of the river below. My stomach lurched, my heart hammered, and in that split second of freefall I thought, this is it. This is how I die. Then came the water. We hit the river with bone-crushing force. Cold stabbed into my body like 1,000 knives, stealing my breath, ripping the air from my lungs. My limbs flailed helplessly as the current dragged me under. Darkness closed in. Michael's grip didn't loosen. Even beneath the water, he clung to me like a drowning man refusing to let go. His knife was gone, but his hold was stronger than iron. I kicked, I struggled, bubbles bursting from my mouth, but the current twisted us together, dragging us deeper. The river was alive, wild, merciless. It tossed us against rocks, pulled us down into whirlpools, then spat us back up toward the surface only to drag us under again. My lungs screamed for air, my vision blurred. I fought with everything in me, clawing at Michael's arms, desperate to break free. For a brief second, my head broke above the surface. I gasped, choking, the night sky spinning overhead. I saw the cliff far above, flashlights waving frantically, Robert's voice faint but desperate, calling my name. Margaret! But before I could cry back, Michael yanked me under again. His eyes glowed in the murky water, wild and furious. His mouth opened in a distorted snarl, bubbles rushing out as he pulled me deeper. Rage replaced my fear. I kicked hard, my foot connecting with his wounded shoulder. He grunted underwater, his grip faltering for the first time. I twisted, fought, clawed until finally, his hand slipped from my arm. I shot upward, breaking the surface once more. Air rushed into my lungs, sweet and painful. I coughed, choking, my arms flailing as the current carried me downstream. But the river wasn't done with me. The current grew faster, stronger. The roar of water grew louder, and then I saw it, a drop ahead. My heart froze. A waterfall. The police lights were fading in the distance. Robert's voice was lost in the roar. The water dragged me closer and closer, spinning me helplessly toward the edge. And then, from behind, Michael burst through the surface again, his face pale with rage and madness. His arms clawed at me, trying to drag me down with him one last time. No, I screamed, my voice hoarse. Let me go. The current didn't wait. It seized both of us, pulling us toward the edge. The last thing I saw before we went over was the moonlight glinting on the endless drop ahead. And then we fell. The plunge over the waterfall felt like being swallowed by the sky itself. My scream tore from my throat, but the roar of the water devoured it whole. The world spun in a blur of moonlight, spray, and terror before I crashed into the pool below with a force that knocked every thought out of me. The impact stole the breath from my lungs. The cold water slammed against me, dragging me down into its dark depths. For a terrifying moment, I couldn't tell which way was up or down. My chest burned, my arms flailed, panic clawing at me like sharp teeth. Somehow I fought to the surface. My head broke through and I gasped for air, coughing and choking as the current carried me forward. The waterfall thundered behind me, a beast still roaring in triumph. But I wasn't alone. Michael rose from the water just a few feet away. His face was pale, twisted with rage, his movements desperate and clumsy. His wound had weakened him, but not enough to stop him. He lunged toward me again, splashing through the waves, his voice hoarse and broken. "You won't leave me behind," he roared. "If I drown, you drown with me." My body screamed with exhaustion. Every muscle burned. But something inside me, something fierce, something desperate to live, rose stronger than the fear. I kicked hard, swimming away from him, the icy water tearing at my skin. The river spat us into a calmer stretch, the current easing slightly. My hands found a jagged rock jutting from the water. I clung to it with shaking arms, my lungs heaving. Michael struggled behind me, his arms flailing, his body fighting the current. For a second I saw him falter. His head went under, then resurfaced. His eyes locked on mine, wild and furious, but also strangely pleading. "Help me," he gasped. "Don't let me die." For a heartbeat, time froze. My enemy, my captor, the man who had dragged me into this nightmare, was begging me for life. Part of me wanted to let go, to let the river take him the way he had tried to take me. But another part, tired, broken, human, hesitated. My hands trembled on the rock. My breath came fast and shallow. Do I save him? Do I let him go? Before I could decide, the sound of voices carried faintly through the trees along the riverbank. Flashlights flickered in the distance. The police. And Robert. They were still searching. Hope flared in my chest, but it was cut short. Michael's body, weak and desperate, lunged one final time. His hand grabbed my wrist, his nails digging into my skin. His weight pulled me back toward the water, away from the rock, away from safety. Our eyes met, his burning with rage and fear, mine wide with terror. And then, the rock beneath my hand crumbled. We both plunged under again. The river closed over us, dragging us back into its dark, merciless depths. The river swallowed us whole. Cold darkness pressed against my chest as Michael's grip dragged me down again. My lungs screamed, my arms thrashed, my body begged for air. His eyes burned in the shadows, his face twisted with fury, bubbles rushing from his mouth as he snarled underwater. I clawed at his arm, kicked against his chest, but he clung tighter, his fingers digging into my skin like shackles. "This ends with us." His muffled scream gurgled through the water. My chest convulsed. My vision blurred. The edges of my world grew black. I thought of Robert's face, of my wedding dress still hanging in my room, of the life I might never get to live. And suddenly I felt something inside me snap. A fire I didn't know I had ignited. I twisted hard, driving my knee into Michael's wounded side. His grip loosened for a split second. It was all I needed. I ripped my arm free, kicking upward with every ounce of strength I had left. My body screamed, but I fought harder than I ever had in my life. The surface broke above me. Air rushed into my lungs as I coughed and gasped. My arms flailed until I found another rock, slick and jagged, and I clung to it desperately. Behind me, Michael surfaced again, but weaker this time. His movements were sluggish, his face pale, his wound bleeding heavily into the water. His eyes met mine, filled with both rage and despair. "Help me," he croaked, his voice breaking. I froze. The man who had kidnapped me, who had tried to kill me over and over again, was begging for mercy. And in that moment, I made my choice. I whispered through trembling lips, "No more." The current pulled him away. His body thrashed, then vanished beneath the dark waves. The river swallowed him, and he did not rise again. Silence fell, broken only by the distant rush of water. My body shook violently as I clung to the rock, sobbing with exhaustion, relief, and grief all at once. Flashlights appeared along the riverbank. Voices shouted my name. Robert's voice rang out, filled with desperation and hope. "Margaret! Hold on, I'm coming." Moments later, strong arms pulled me from the water. Robert's embrace was warm, trembling, soaked with both river water and tears. His lips pressed against my forehead, his voice breaking. You're safe now. It's over." I collapsed into his arms, my body weak, my soul heavy but alive. Alive. The police confirmed it later. Michael's body was never recovered. The river had claimed him for good. Days later, I stood in front of the mirror, my wedding dress draped over me. My body bore scars, my heart carried wounds, but I was breathing. I was still here. When I walked down the aisle, I didn't just walk as a bride. I walked as a survivor. And here's the lesson I want you, dear listener, to take with you. Sometimes life will drag you into dark waters. Sometimes the people you trust will turn into your deepest threats. But no matter how deep you're pulled, no matter how strong the current, there is always strength inside you to fight back. You can rise. You can survive. My name is Margaret. I am 62 years old, speaking to you from North Carolina, USA. If you've been following this story, I want to thank you deeply. Please don't forget to subscribe, like, and click the notification button so you won't miss any more of my upcoming stories. And before you go, I'd love to know, from which part of the country are you watching me today? Because stories like mine, they remind us all that no matter where we are, survival is possible. The days after the river felt like a blur of shadows and half-heard voices. My body was bruised, my skin bore cuts from the rocks, and my lungs ached as if the water still lived inside them. Yet every time I closed my eyes, it wasn't the pain I felt most. It was the memory of Michael's hand pulling me down, his wild eyes begging me for help before the river claimed him. Robert refused to leave my side. At the hospital, he sat in a chair beside my bed, his fingers laced through mine, even when his own wounds should have been treated more seriously. His shoulder had been stitched up, but the pain didn't seem to bother him as much as the thought of losing me had. "You're safe now, Margaret," he whispered one night as the moonlight filtered through the blinds. "He's gone. He can't hurt you anymore." But was that true? The police had searched the river for days. Divers went in and out, patrol boats swept the water, but they never recovered Michael's body. Some said the current had taken him far downstream. Others believed he had gotten trapped in the jagged rocks below the falls. But no one could say for certain. And in that uncertainty, my peace shattered. Because if there was even the slightest chance Michael was still alive, then everything, my wedding, my safety, my future, was still at risk. Robert tried to comfort me, but he could see the fear in my eyes. Every creak of the hospital hallway at night made my heart race. Every shadow against the window felt like him watching me. By the end of the week, the doctors discharged me. I thought I would feel relief stepping back into the sunlight, but instead I felt exposed, vulnerable. The whole world seemed too open, too dangerous. Yet, in just a few days, my wedding was scheduled to happen. My white dress still hung in my closet, untouched, waiting for me. My friends called and sent flowers, begging me to reschedule, but Robert wouldn't hear of it. "No," he said firmly, holding my hand. "You've been through enough. This wedding will be the start of our new life. It will happen, Margaret. Nothing and no one will stop it this time." I wanted to believe him. I truly did. But that night as I lay in bed I heard it. A sound that froze my blood. 3 slow knocks at the window. My breath caught in my throat. The curtains stirred from the wind, but the sound came again, deliberate, heavy, certain. Robert stirred beside me. "Did you hear that?" he whispered. Before I could answer, the knock came a third time, louder. And then a shadow moved past the glass. Robert jumped out of bed first, his injured shoulder slowing him but not stopping him. He grabbed the lamp from the bedside table and held it like a weapon. My heart hammered so hard I thought it would crack my ribs as we both stared at the window. The curtains swayed gently in the night breeze. For a moment, silence. Then another thud, this time at the door. Robert pressed a finger to his lips, signaling me to stay quiet. He crept toward the door, lamp raised, every muscle in his body tense. I clutched the bedsheets, my nails digging into the fabric, praying silently that it wasn't who I feared. The door creaked open, and standing there was not Michael. It was a police officer, rain dripping from his hat, his flashlight beam cutting across the room. "Sorry to startle you folks," he said quickly. "We've been patrolling the area tonight. A neighbor reported seeing someone lurking around your yard. Tall man, dark hair, moving between the trees." My blood ran cold. Robert's jaw tightened. "Did you catch him?" The officer shook his head. "We followed footprints toward the woods, but they disappeared near the riverbank. We can't confirm if it's the man you told us about, ma'am, but—" His voice trailed off, uneasy. I didn't need him to finish. My heart already knew. Michael. Alive. I felt dizzy, the room spinning as the officer gave instructions about locking the windows and calling immediately if we saw anything suspicious. Robert closed the door after him, locking it tight. He turned to me, his face grim but determined. Margaret, listen to me. I don't care what anyone says, we're not canceling this wedding. He won't win. Do you hear me? He won't win. I nodded weakly, though my hands trembled. I wanted to believe him, to hold on to the hope that love was stronger than fear. But deep down a storm churned inside me. That night I couldn't sleep. Every creak of the house, every rustle of leaves outside, felt like Michael creeping closer. I lay awake until dawn, clutching Robert's hand, praying for strength. By morning, I thought maybe, just maybe, my fears were only shadows of the night. But then when I walked downstairs to make tea, I saw it. Lying on the porch, right against the front door. A single white rose. And tied to its stem was a blood-stained ribbon. The sight of that white rose froze me in place. My knees went weak, my hand trembled on the doorknob. The ribbon tied around the stem was dark, sticky, unmistakably stained with blood. For a moment I couldn't breathe. Robert came rushing down the stairs when he heard my gasp. His eyes widened as they landed on the rose. He picked it up carefully, his jaw clenching so tightly I thought his teeth might crack. "This is him," he muttered. "He's playing with us. Taunting us." My voice shook. "But how?" "Robert, they said he was gone. The river." "The river didn't take him," Robert cut in, his voice low, grim. "He's alive. And he wants you scared before the wedding. He wants control." My stomach twisted. I thought of Michael's eyes in the water, the way he had begged me for help. Maybe I should have helped him. Or maybe mercy would have meant my death. Now his shadow stretched over every corner of my life. Robert took the rose to the police station that morning. They promised to increase patrols, but the doubt in their eyes was clear. Without a body, without evidence, Michael was still just a ghost in their records. But I knew. He was no ghost. He was real. And he was watching. That night, I sat by the window, staring out at the trees that bordered our house. My hands twisted the hem of my blanket, my ears straining for the faintest sound. Robert tried to distract me with talk of the wedding, of the vows we'd soon share, but even his warmth couldn't chase away the chill crawling down my spine. Then it came. A flash. Just for a second, between the trees. A glint of light, like moonlight reflecting off glass. A pair of eyes? Or binoculars? I blinked, pressed closer to the window, but it was gone. The forest lay still and quiet, as if mocking me. Robert wanted to rush out there, but I clung to his arm, begging him not to. We stayed awake the whole night, waiting, listening. Nothing came. By morning the sun painted the sky with streaks of orange. For a fleeting moment I felt foolish. Maybe it was only a trick of light. Maybe I was letting fear win. Until I went to the kitchen. There, lying on the counter where I had left nothing the night before, was a folded piece of paper. I picked it up with trembling hands. Inside, written in jagged, hurried handwriting, were 4 words. "See you at church." My heart dropped. Michael was planning to be at my wedding. The morning of my wedding should have been filled with joy. The smell of flowers, the laughter of friends, the rustle of silk as my dress slipped over my shoulders. All of it should have been the happiest day of my life. But instead, every moment felt like a countdown. The note, "See you at church," burned in my mind. I kept glancing at the windows, expecting his face to appear in the glass. My hands shook so badly the bridesmaids had to pin my veil for me. They thought it was nerves, but Robert knew the truth. He stood close, his jaw tight, his eyes scanning every corner of the room like a soldier preparing for battle. The church was decorated beautifully, the white aisle lined with roses, the pews filled with family and friends. But to me, every open door was a threat. Every shadow was Michael waiting to strike. The police promised to station plainclothes officers around the building, just in case. But would that be enough? Michael had already escaped rivers and cliffs. What was one more locked door to him? The music began. The organ filled the air with sweet notes, and all eyes turned as I stepped into the aisle. Robert stood at the altar, his eyes softening the moment he saw me. For a heartbeat the world felt normal, almost safe. Step by step I walked closer. My heart pounded, my palms damp inside my gloves. My veil blurred the view of the pews, but I felt it. A pair of eyes boring into me, colder than all the rest. Halfway down the aisle a shiver shot through me. And then I saw it. At the very back of the church, standing in the shadow of the doorway, was a figure. Tall, broad, his suit blending with the darkness. Michael. His lips curved into the faintest smile, his eyes locked on mine. My knees buckled, the bouquet trembling in my grip. The music faltered as the pianist glanced up, sensing something was wrong. Murmurs spread through the crowd. Robert's voice cut through the tension. "Margaret? What is it?" I couldn't speak. My lips formed the word, but no sound came out. "Michael." The figure at the door took one step forward. And then, a scream erupted from outside, followed by the crack of shattering glass. The church doors slammed shut. The lights flickered. Chaos exploded. The church erupted in panic. Guests screamed, rushing toward the pews. Children clung to their mothers as the lights flickered overhead. The air filled with the sharp crack of breaking glass and the echo of footsteps pounding against the floor. My veil trembled as I turned, my heart slamming against my ribs. The doors that had just slammed shut now burst open again. And there he was. Michael. Alive. Soaked in shadows, his suit torn, his face pale but eyes burning with a mad fire. He staggered forward, a jagged piece of glass gripped in his hand like a weapon. "Did you think you could bury me in that river?" he roared, his voice raw. "Did you think love could save you from me?" Gasps filled the room. The officers hidden among the guests sprang up, guns drawn, but Michael grabbed the nearest woman, one of my bridesmaids, and pressed the shard against her throat. "Back off," he snarled. "Or she dies first, then the bride." The church fell into a terrified silence. I could barely breathe. Robert stepped forward, his voice calm but firm, his hands raised. "Michael, stop. This ends here. You don't have to do this." Michael's eyes darted between us, his face twisted in pain and hatred. "You stole everything from me, Robert. Her love, her future. Everything that should have been mine." Tears blurred my eyes. "Michael," I said softly, my voice trembling, "you can't keep living like this. You've drowned yourself in hate, and it's killing you. Let her go. Let me go." For a flicker of a second, his grip faltered. His eyes softened, as though the weight of his choices finally pressed against his heart. But just as quickly, rage replaced it. He shoved the bridesmaid aside and lunged straight toward me, the shard glinting under the flickering lights. The world slowed. I saw Robert leap forward. I saw the officers raise their guns. I saw Michael's face, twisted with fury and desperation, charging straight at me. And then, the thunder of gunshots filled the air. Michael's body jerked. The shard slipped from his hand, clattering against the church floor. His eyes, once burning, now dimmed with shock. He stumbled, fell to his knees, and crumpled before the altar. Silence fell, broken only by my ragged breaths. The officers rushed in, checking him, confirming what I already knew. Michael was gone. For real this time. I collapsed against Robert, sobbing, the weight of weeks of terror finally crashing down. He held me close, whispering, "It's over. It's finally over." And yet, as I looked around the church, at my guests trembling, at the bloodstain marring the aisle where I should have walked in joy, I realized something. Life doesn't always give us perfect beginnings. Sometimes, our most sacred days are interrupted by storms we never asked for. But even in the middle of the chaos, love has the power to anchor us, to carry us through. Days later, Robert and I stood again at the altar. Not with fear, not with shadows, but with hope. We said our vows. We kissed. And for the first time in weeks, I felt peace. My name is Margaret. I am 62 years old, speaking to you from North Carolina, USA. If this story touched you, please don't forget to subscribe, like, and click the notification button for more upcoming interesting stories. And before you go, let me ask, from which part of the country are you watching me today? Because no matter where you are, remember this. Storms will come, shadows will rise, but love and courage can carry you through even the darkest waters.